My dear friends, let us enjoy three sounds of the bell together. We're sitting in a natural environment with the wind chimes, leaves rustling, sound of the wind. It's very beautiful. And we also have the sound of the bell that helps bring us back to our natural breathing, to our precious body. And it helps us to bring our mind back to be in oneness with the body, to be in the here and the now. When you hear the sound of the bell, just simply smile. Come back to your natural in-breath as it is, your natural out-breath as it is. Simply enjoy breathing, enjoy smiling, and thoughts may come, and let them come and go. Feelings may arise, let them arise and subside. Simply be in the here and the now. Come back, come back. I'm here for you.
Thank you. To begin, would you please share your name and a little about your journey to becoming a monastic?
Dear beloved Thai teacher, dear friends, my name is Sister Dang Nghiem. Literally it means adornment with non-discrimination. And my teacher is Zen Master Thích Nhất Hạnh. He gave me that name. When we ordain, we receive a practice name from our teacher. And it means adornment with non-discrimination. So that's the door of practice for me. A door of liberation, nothing grand in my daily life to see my mind of discrimination when it arises. Good versus bad. You want or you don't want something. You grasp something and you have aversion for other things. So when those tendencies arise, I practice recognizing them, smiling with them, and releasing them. And right in those moments, I experience a sense of lightness and freedom. So it's a very practical, valuable practice in my daily life. But in short, it's Sister D. Easy for people to remember. And I've been ordained as a nun for almost 25 years now.
Thank you. So the Buddha, he focused a lot of his teachings on suffering, or dukkha. Can you, in your understanding, share what suffering is and fundamentally what causes us to suffer?
In the first teaching of the Buddha taught about the Four Noble Truths. So over the centuries, many people misunderstood is important because in our society, we often have such fear towards suffering. We avoid acknowledging it. We try to use consumption. We use, entertainment. We do everything we can to escape suffering, including drugs and medications and entertainment, to avoid suffering. But the truth is that wherever we go, there we are. So there is pain in the body, there is pain in the thoughts, the feelings, from within and from without. But Thai has also taught our teacher, we call him Thai, means teacher, in a loving, simple way. And Thai has taught us that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And suffering is only optional when we can acknowledge it, recognize it, take good care of it, so that mud becomes lotus. If we don't acknowledge and take care of mud, mud is still there, but it's very sticky and stinky, and it plagues every aspect of our life. It affects our thoughts, our speech, our bodily actions, in all aspects of our lives. So that is why we practice to acknowledge mud without the feeling of aversion or attachment. We will think that nobody wants suffering, but in many ways we are addicted to suffering at the same time as we try to escape suffering. And at the same time, we will say, it's my suffering. You don't understand. We will turn away from love, from help, in order to curl up with suffering, to think that we are unique, that our suffering is ours, and we don't see it's a human condition, and that we cause it to ourselves and to each other. So to acknowledge that it exists and that it's both individual and collective, and that with practice we can transform and heal ourselves, can be liberated. Suffering helps us to appreciate even more the simple conditions of happiness that are available to us. We don't take them for granted. So in that way, mud contains lotuses right in itself.
Thank you. Can you please share what is mindfulness and how can it help people with transforming their suffering?
What is mindfulness and how to help us transform the suffering? I was trained as a medical doctor. So if somebody comes to the emergency room under critical condition, the first 3 questions we would ask to evaluate the patient is whether the patient is alert and oriented to person, time, and space. Alert and oriented to person. Hello, sir. What's your name? What's your name? Time, you know which day it is. Place, you know where you are. And if the person is alert and oriented to time, space, and person, then actually we can quickly assume that the person is coherent and the condition is not, is more salvageable than somebody who's in a coma or totally discombobulated. So mindfulness is like that. We learn to be alert, awake, aware, and oriented to person, time, and space, because very often we're not aware of who we are, as we try to be somebody else, to accommodate, to please, to escape, to fight, to flight. We don't really know who we are. And very often we're not very aware of our surrounding, the internal mindscape as well as the external space, environment, even the time, the date. We're very much lost. For example, if you sit at a computer for 2 hours, 5 hours, young people nowadays can spend 8 hours in front of the screen. They're definitely not alert and oriented to person, time, and space. So mindfulness is to be aware of what's going on inside us, in this body, thoughts and feelings, and to be aware of what's going on around us. To be aware. And when we learn to be aware of what's going on inside and outside, already that is training ourselves to be in the here and the now. What's really happening. And that is the best way really to learn to take care of suffering. Most of us, we suffer from something that happened from the past, in our childhood, in our, young life. And we continue to be haunted by the past. We continue to behave as if we are still victims of the past. Through our repetitive thinking, speech, and patterns of behaviors, we continue to perpetuate suffering. We continue to run or to fight, to try to escape or to check out, to be out of our own body. So that is how suffering is perpetuated. That is how a victim becomes a perpetrator of their suffering. So to be able to be in the here and the now, to know what's going on, it will help us to recognize those unbeneficial, even destructive patterns, and to learn to breathe, to call our thoughts and feelings by their true names, and to say, it's okay, I'm right here, and I've grown up. Now I have more sovereignty. I can take better care of myself. I can use the spiritual practices such as mindful breathing, mindful walking, mindful sitting, to embrace the difficulties inside me so that I don't have to rehearse those negative patterns, negative coping mechanisms, or the neural pathways in me. So we learn to put a stop to that and to learn to respond in the here and the now and not through the lens of the past. And we learn to literally to develop new neural pathways that are more mindful and peaceful, and that helps us to slowly heal the wounds of the past. And even if something atrocious, unpleasant that's happening right in the here and the now, mindfulness also helps us to respond to the situation with calmness, with clarity, instead of reacting to it. When we react to something, it could be just very automatic, and it can actually worsen the situation. But when we have equanimity, clarity, we can really have more control over the situation. We can control the damage. We can be more aware of the environment and save ourselves more effectively. So it's the process. We learn to go through the process mindfully from the beginning mindfulness, there's clarity, there's peace. Even in a divorce case or in an abusive situation or unpleasant situation at our workplace, if we have mindfulness and wisdom, we will take care of the situation much more effectively. And when we look back, we will not have to suffer from trauma or from regrets. But we know that we have done our best, and that it gives us a sense of confidence and confidence and self-sovereignty, that we can protect and take care of ourselves along the way. That is the best way to take care of suffering of the present moment as well as suffering from the past.
So in the Plum Village tradition, there's a phrase that's emphasized, that the way out is in. And I think perhaps you spoke to this just now a little bit, so forgive me if it sounds repetitive, but can you share a little of what this means and how somebody can begin to go in instead of running away?
The way out is in is a counterbalance to the way of our society, that we always look outward for solutions, through escapism, through consumerism. We always look outside for temporary fix or solutions, but along the way that causes more problems. It makes the situation more complicated and more severe as a result. It's like, for example, we lose our job, then we get into drinking, doing drugs, then from losing a job, we become addicted to alcohol, to drugs. It can lead to depression, then it can lead to, it causes the marriage to fall apart, relationships to go south, etc., etc. So, but when we learn that the way out is in, is to come back and calm our body and mind. It's the practice of stopping and deep looking, so that we see more clearly what to do and what not to do, what to say and what not to say. Now we live at Deer Park, where it's right in nature, and I see the squirrels. They are always moving about. The rabbits, you see them constantly moving about. But actually, very often, I also see squirrels. They would perch on a boulder, very still like this, for like 5 minutes. Just this afternoon, as I was eating lunch, one perched on one boulder and another on another boulder, and they were incredibly still. So if you see animals, the dogs, the cats, the squirrels, the rabbits, the snakes, all animals, they actually take time out to be completely still, doing nothing, going nowhere. And I think that helps them to just release all the tension and the stress. Because animals, they live in the wild, they constantly face danger, right? But after, for example, like a mouse escaped from a cat, or a bird hitting the glass window, afterwards they will shake, they tremble. they tremble. But that helps them to release the stress, the tension. When I released a very big rattlesnake, it didn't slither away right away. It kind of lay very still. We had to step back, and then we actually just left the big trash can there, and then it took its time to go on its way. So animals have that wisdom to stop, to let the body process the stress and the tension. So that's why they live in the wild, they face constant danger, but they don't suffer the same kind of trauma that humans do. That we have forgotten that capacity to stop, rest, release, and look deeply. And so the way out is in. It helps us to make time for ourselves, to simply sit and do nothing. Get a hammock and lie on the hammock and swing back and forth. To go for a walk. You walk, but you are stopping because your mind is not running, it's not thinking, it's not planning, scheming something. You can just simply be like a tree, like a rock, like a squirrel in stillness. And that is a way of being in touch with being in oneness in body and mind. And it helps us to quiet everything. And in that quietness and stillness, we actually hear and see more clearly, more deeply. And that wisdom, the inner wisdom, will spring forth. And we will know what we need to do and what we need not to do. And a lot of time we actually do not need to do a whole lot. It is in having so much fear and anxiety that we struggle, that we kick and scream, and we cause more damage. But in being still, quiet, just to take time, a little time before we respond, that actually it helps to control the situation much better, more effectively. So the way out is in, back to the body, in, back to that reservoir of calmness, of clarity, of wisdom, deep within. It's always there for us through our lifetime, and the wisdom from our parents and ancestors, the wisdom of the land, of our spiritual ancestors. We have that reservoir that we need to tap in and benefit from.